Welcome back to Behind the Play. My name is Alex Adams, and today I'm joined by someone I really admire in the industry, Baraheni. I love reading your stuff, listening to your podcasts, and just everything you do. So you're an amazing writer, amazing basketball pundit, and just it's incredible to have you on once again. And
Thank you, man.
thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you for having me on as always. Good to chat and talk hoops and whatnot. I know you've been kind of climbing the ranks over the last couple of months as well, especially on the hockey front, which is really cool to see. Keep at it, my guy. It's a tough industry, as they say.
Yes,
But yeah,
yes.
keep cracking, my guy. Keep cracking.
Yeah, no, it definitely is, and yeah, very. I do miss. I will say for everyone, I do miss my basketball stuff. I'm pretty much in the weeds for hockey, but I do my best
Yeah.
to watch almost every Raptors game, and I think I listen to and read your work and a lot of Zach Lowe, a lot maybe too much Bill Simmons, but yeah, that's kind of my life. But I want to ask you a little bit before we get started, and I'll ask you some hard hitting questions, but. How do you kind of approach like watching game film and taking notes during games? Because I look at the clips you make after games and it's just so like that must be a lot of work. Just kind of take us behind the scenes of
Yeah.
of kind of what a typical game day and looking at watching the game is like for you.
Mhm. Yeah, so game days usually I have like a whole setup here that you obviously can't see because you're on the opposite side of it. But I have a whole setup here that helps me, record. I have a nice monitor here on the other side where I watch the game. I'll be recording live and kind of clipping and posting and whatnot. And honestly, I don't take notes. I don't take much notes during the game. My notes are my timeline. So like I use the timeline as my notes, so to speak. So I'll be like
Mm.
throwing stuff in there. I'll be tweeting stuff. I'll be like retweeting stuff that I think will be useful later on. And so I kind of have that as my notes for the game. And it's sort of like an open diary notebook, if you will, of like what my thoughts are throughout the game. And then afterwards, I have all the clips here that I kind of go through, examine what things I want to talk about specifically, recap the game, talk about the whole whatnot, and then look up the post game stuff afterwards to see if there are any good sound bites to throw in there. So that's the gist of it. It's like 2.5 hours for the game, and then about 2 to 3 hours for afterwards, just kind of like sifting through the game footage and pulling like video stuff, and then you know editing it all together. So and obviously performing it too. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and with that, when you are making a video for social media or for a channel, like how do you like how much of that editing, like how do you just walk us through it? Because I think
Yeah.
that people might not like see, oh, it's 10 minutes and oh that must be quite easy. And I don't think that's the case. So maybe
Yeah.
describe a little bit just what you look for in terms of making a video that you think people will enjoy.
I think when you're initially thinking of the type of content or whatever that you want to make, it's all about structure. And the first time I ever want to do a video, it takes me hours to make because I'm focusing on structure. I'm focusing on like, okay, how am I going to make this? And then you build out a skeleton for yourself that you use throughout the rest of it. So now I have this sort of workflow that I go through, which is like, okay, I'm going to hop on Zoom. I'm going to record my little recap piece. I know where I'm punching in and out in terms of the sound bites. And then afterwards, I already have the clips on my timeline that I want to talk about. I sort of just play them as I'm recording and talk about the clips. Maybe I'll slow down the clips just to give myself a little bit more time, but I usually slow down the clips afterwards, piece them together, do a little bit of an explainer, and then just go from there and record it. And yeah, it is an extensive process. A lot of people have mentioned it that it is a lot of work to do every single game, but I really wanted to do something that was unique and it was
Mm.
different because it's my goal is to always stand out. And I think my the intention was to do something that could blend the TV style reporting that you see on television from your like main TV
Yeah.
broadcasts and incorporate the podcast style recap type things that people enjoy into one online platform and kind of push it that way. So yeah, that's the work behind it, man.
I know a bunch of fans will want to ask about how you started doing your post game hits at
Yeah.
Raptors games outside the, I guess it's Scotiabank Arena. Just talk about how that came to be and what that, all your experiences, just anything from that stands out.
Yeah,
Maybe
it's
what made you start, and then maybe a couple cool stories that you have for experiences.
Yeah, look, I mean, I tell anybody who wants to listen, the advice I have is like, if you want to go do something in this industry, you have to just go out and do it, and nothing is better than the reps that you can make for yourself. And so I wanted to have these reps. Obviously, I've done sideline reporting before. I did it for the CBL. I've done reporting at school before. I have experience being on camera, being on a mic, and sort of doing those type of stand ups, and I knew that I was
Mhm.
good at those type of things. And so I was like, how can I make that into what I want to do? And also, how can I show a potential employer down the road that like, hey, I can do these type of things for you. And so my goal was to do something like that, and go outside and record these videos, and then be able to come back home and edit it all together and piecemeal it in a way that is, the recaps that you guys see. It's been an interesting experience to say the least, because you're outside, right outside of the arena. I have my light attached to my car
Oh my God.
via cigarette lighter, and so you see the light coming, to kind of work with me, and then the car is there waiting and whatnot. It's an interesting process. If you were to catch me, shout out to Savannah Hamilton. Savannah, she caught
Mhm.
me doing it one time, and I'm like, oh hey, hi, how you doing? And it's awkward setup with the light and the car door open and everything, but yeah, it's interesting to say the least to do that. It's a fun experience. Obviously, I can't do it right now because of the weather. It's just insane to do,
Yeah.
but once we get a little bit better, hopefully I'll get back out there.
You need like two Canada Goose sweaters like on top of each other or something along that
Yeah,
those lines
it does
to
get
to
cold, bro.
to
It
keep
does
you
get cold.
warm. Obviously you've this year you've transitioned a bit more to more Raptors coverage. Just but you also do a lot of NBA stuff as well. Like how do you manage to hone in on one team while knowing like the rest of the league? Just how do you do that?
Watching a lot of basketball, bro. a lot, watching a lot of basketball. My morning routine is, even if I probably will pick one or two games to watch in their entirety. And shout out to NBA League Pass. They have this great hour long or 45-minute long version of the game, which is just all the possessions packed together, even the misses, even the turnovers, all that
Oh.
stuff. So it's a 45-minute version that I can get through. I usually pick two games from the night before that aren't Raptors games. I'll watch those and then sort of recap, watch the 10-minute highlights of the rest of them, just so I can keep in mind, listen to a lot of podcasts, read a lot of work from my colleagues. That's the way I keep up to date with the NBA. And obviously I'm a fan, right? So I'm always kind of
Mhm.
focusing in on stuff like that. So yeah.
How do you get yourself to watch a Detroit Charlotte Monday night game? Like how do
Man, I
you
love those games. I
yeah?
love them. Yeah, sometimes they're a lot of fun because you can see the wrinkles of like, I don't know, Isaiah Livers doing something,
Hmm.
or M. Thompson, or Asar Thompson, or Jalen Duren, or whoever. Like you have these like little interesting favorite players that you start to pick out throughout the league, and you like to follow their journeys, and then that's the way you do it. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. Bryce McGowan's on the Charlotte
There
Hornets, man. Come
there you
on,
go.
Yeah.
What a legend. And with that, I know you've told me a little bit off air just how much just for you like just not being someone that knows the game of basketball is like always something that's maybe a bit intimidating. I know myself
Yeah.
like covering the team in Jakarta and I'm with Blake Murphy or other people talking and I'm like, "Oh, my hoops knowledge is way different." Like how do you try to have almost a basketball brain when you watch these games? Like what do you look for? How do you try to explain it to people that might not understand what a Spain pick and roll is or something along those lines?
Yeah. First of all, I deal with a lot of imposter syndrome when it comes to that. Just because there's always going to be someone that knows more than you, that is more knowledgeable than you. That I mean, and like you especially when like I've been in rooms with coaches now and scouts and players, and those guys know more basketball than I could ever remember, right? And I think that intimidates me a little bit.
Mm,
It's something that I'm working on. It's something that I'm trying to grow because I have to have confidence in my ability to talk basketball and know basketball. But I also, you have to have an openness to understand that you don't know everything, and
hmm
that it's this learning process that you're constantly going through all the time. I if someone were to throw me into hockey right now
Yeah,
and like,
yeah,
ask me to learn about it, I could give you bare bones knowledge, but it'll take a while for me to get to the point where I can talk about different, schematic things or things
mhm.
whatever. I even to the casual fan, like I still don't understand the strategy behind some of the hockey stuff at all. Like to me, it just seems like people throwing the puck back and forth, right? But there
Yeah.
is clearly a strategy to it, right?
Mhm.
And so you kind of you have to break it down into the context of that if you're trying to explain it to someone. It's like, all right, people know what picks are, people know what shots are, people know what floaters are, people know these like bare bones concepts for basketball. How can we stack these together to show you, hey, there's this cool play the Raptors are running that you can
Mhm.
see? And yeah, I guess that's it.
And how has it been? Because I know you've been more around the team and around the NBA and have I was listening to you and it sounds like you have a couple sources as well. Like you don't have I'm not asking you to tell me
Yeah.
that what Masai Ujiri's phone number is, but in truly like how have you been able to build those relationships and maybe what advice would you have to journalists trying to get in the game and get to know people within the NBA world?
Arrive to games early is my tip. Get there very early. And
Mhm.
it's just going to be you in the gym. And in those moments, there's time to talk to assistant coaches. There's time to talk to players. There's times to talk to, executives and media people and whatnot. And those are the times where I felt like I've gotten the most to be able to discuss with people and talk with people and whatnot. So get to games early. Is my opinion to people who are trying to get into the sports media world. And the other thing I would say is like you just gotta like these things kind of happen. Being
Mhm.
open to communication is I guess something that I would say you always have to have in sports media, and also just trusting that you have something that you can contribute. So going into any conversation knowing that you can also bring value, you can bring worth. I think that's important in considering
Mhm.
any kind of communication, if you will.
Have you had a starstruck moment where you've been around a player or a coach? Not you don't have to say what you talked about with that
Sure.
player, but just any moment that sticks out for you.
No, yeah, the Kelly Olynyk piece that I recently did for Raptors
Yeah.
Republic. I shout out to Jazz PR. They were very, very kind with me. They allowed me to go into the Jazz locker room post game,
Cool.
and that was my first time being in a locker room post game. And
Nice.
you're kind of it's kind of crazy because all these like large dudes in towels, and you're just kind of like, okay, I don't want to bother you while you're changing. Like it
Yeah.
kind of awkward to go ahead and do that. And so I didn't know how to navigate, and I kind of just was like, I'm just gonna gain the nads to go and talk to Lowry Markkinen because I'm very curious about Lowry in general and his career and whatnot. And so he had both of his feet in the ice buckets, kind of cooling down. He was chilling. He was on his phone, and I was kind of just like, "Hey, Lowry, what's going on, pal?" And I wasn't starstruck. I wouldn't say I was starstruck, but I was just intimidated by the situation of
Yeah.
being in the locker room initially. And to be honest with you, I think I handled myself pretty well. I think I did not too bad. Raptors teams, PR teams who are listening to this, I did a good job. Let me into more locker rooms. I can handle myself professionally. So, yes. Yeah, it was fun.
Well, it sounds way better than my experience where I've had one experience where I went up to a player and I said their name and they said no, that's not my name. It's pronounced this way. I'm like, oh, that's not good. And then I've asked everyone else about this player's name and I have still heard that it's the name that I said when I introduced myself. So I don't know what happened there, but I've had thankfully they're all very good, but I'm
Yeah.
glad that your experience seems to be much more cleaner and maybe a bit more finesse than mine.
Yeah, yeah.
But I want to go obviously to the Raptors. Obviously, huge trade that happened, and you've been talking about it extensively. Just what have you seen in this team now with RJ Barrett and Immanuel Quickley, and they're scoring like gangbusters. Just what have you seen differently than the team before with OG and Anunoby?
I think the thing that initially pops out is more functionality. So they make more sense as a unit. They have so much more versatility. They're a lot more dynamic in the way that they can approach things. You mentioned the scoring in bunches, and yeah, they're a great offensive team. I think adding a guy like Quickly, a guard who can attack downhill, really, really fast player, shoot the ball obviously really well. It's added a level of dynamism to their bench units. It's added a level of dynamism to their staggering transitional lineups. And the same thing with RJ Barrett, Canadian, right? Coming off a really, really great summer for Canada. Had a really good start for the Knicks this season, but then sort of fell and fluttered and whatnot. And now he's feeling really, really good back home. I mean, the confidence, finishing, his ability to create his own shot, get downhill, make plays. In the fact that the Raptors have added two more playmakers, it's really helped invigorate the offense because guys are moving the ball. You know, the shots are flying. They're able to create more advantages. And guys like Scottie and Pascal are making teams pay as well. So it's been really fun to watch. They're a really good offensive group. Curious to see how they kind of maneuver and see what happens next, but it's been really good so far.
So we have on behind the play our very own Woj right now. But with maybe your Siakam stuff, just what have you been hearing on that front in terms of if he's going to get traded? What do you think? Is it going to be a quickly RJ package where it's more for the now in a player package rather than maybe picks? Like, what are you just hearing with that? Can he resign? Anything you're
Yeah, I think the main thing, and sorry, Darko Rajakovic just got fined 25K, so I'm posting that.
go
But
for it? I can take the way if you want. I mean, what
no,
I've
you, yeah, go
No,
for it. Yeah, what would you
I
think?
don't understand. I know you talked about a little bit that just to make the money work, if you sign Siakam to a big, max type contract, probably not for, the most amount of money that he can make, but just with the new CBA, it's going to be tough to keep quickly. RJ, obviously Scottie Barnes is going to get a rookie max extension in a year from now.
Yeah.
At the same time, I just don't. He's been so good. This team's like I don't know. It seems to work as you meant. You talked about how it feels much more functional with
Mhm.
the added playmaking and really just they're a better team. It feels like even though they've lost the past two games, they easily could be 2-0 if they had a bit better injury luck. So
Yeah.
yeah, just on that front, like why do you think they're not going to try to extend him, or that might not be the likeliest outcome?
I think it's just money wise, it becomes really hard. And I don't think the Raptors are prepared to sign him to a full 4 year max, which is what Siakam wants. If they were prepared to do that, this deal would have gotten done months ago and he would be a long term Raptor. I just don't think there's a level of interest from them to extend him for that type of money. And I think from Siakam's perspective, that's really the main kicker here. He wants to get that type of money. And so he can't get that if he's traded elsewhere right now. The max they can do is sign him to a 2 year max extension. In the summer, if he were to renegotiate his deal, yes, he can get a 4 year max with any team he gets traded to. But for the most part, I just think it's going to be difficult for the Raptors and Pascal to come to a conclusion where they're like, hey, we're going to give you the max money.
Mhm.
Especially, like you said, given the contractual implications that they have with IQ, with RJ, with Scotty, money is going to get really tight. And unless they find a very, very quick solution to maybe trading Jakob Pertl, maybe trading Dennis Schroeder, trading Boucher, that's what it's going to take to keep a guy like Pascal Siakam. And so, yeah, that's it's unfortunate because you would hope that this team could stay together. It seems like they are building a lot of chemistry, but also it doesn't seem feasible for them to go out and keep a guy like Pascal right now. Again, things could be changed. It's really fluid, but for the most part, I just don't see the Raptors and Pascal coming to terms on a full max agreement.
And does that mean that the team that he goes to, there's a wink wink, let's say he goes to Golden State and it's like, okay, well, we can't sign you now, but you will get a contract on July 1st.
Yeah.
I've also heard just reading your stuff, listening to you, that, he doesn't seem to be very much in the mood or maybe in a state of mind to necessarily say yes to another team
I
wherever
think
he gets
that's
traded.
Yeah, I think that's the issue that the Raptors are coming across right now in trading a guy like Pascal because he's not giving that commitment to other teams. Otherwise, he would have been traded to Atlanta by now, or he would have
Yeah.
been traded to Indiana by now, or he would have been traded to Golden State by now, or even Sacramento. But he's not giving that clear indication to teams that he is willing to re-sign. And I'm not sure if other teams are also willing to re-sign him at that 4 year max. If you think about the Kings situation, they already have Domantas Sabonis, who they just extended. They have De'Aaron Fox, who they just extended. They obviously will have to extend Keegan Murray in a couple years. And so when you look at the money adding up, adding another 4 year max player to that roster becomes less feasible. Golden State is in a position where they're already at the second apron. They're
Yeah.
already paying so much money that maybe it's okay for them to go and just add another guy in there if it increases their championship,
Window.
window, if you will. So yeah, I just think that's the big issue when it comes to trading Siakam. It's finding a suitor, finding teams that one are willing to take that risk, and if Siakam is willing to reciprocate that love and sign an extension with them.
I'm sure you've thought about this a lot, but do you think the Raptors go for like a quickly RJ type package or more for picks when they it seems like do trade Siakam?
Yeah, I think it'll be players. I think the Raptors. I mean, just given where they're at, right? I mean, this is not. It is sourced, but it also isn't sourced. The Raptors have no interest in tanking. They have no interest in rebuilding and gutting the roster and becoming like a bottom five team in the NBA. And even if they did trade Siakam, given how bad the bottom 5 or 6 this year is, it's pretty tough for them to get there. And so I don't think they have any interest in that. I think they want to stay as competitive as possible. I think they want to find a way to kind of piggyback off of Scottie Barnes' ascendance and go into another direction with this new team. Hopefully IQ takes a few steps over the next couple of years. Hopefully RJ builds into a more consistent player. And now you're looking at a team that could maybe potentially one day be a good playoff team. So I think they're looking to add players to that, not picks. I don't think they want to add more. I mean, they will add more young guys to the roster naturally, but I don't think they're going to go actively find a 3 pick, a 4 pick type of thing. I think they would prefer players. That's why you see guys like Keegan Murray mentioned and Jalen Johnson and Nyeka Okongwu and even Jonathan Kuminga. I think they're looking for young players that they can add to this core so that they can build together.
And obviously, outside of maybe the trades this season, people will always think about just the Scottie Barnes leap. And
Yeah.
obviously, his shooting has been phenomenal, really compared to his first 2 seasons. Do you think that's the crux of his success, or what have you seen? Maybe looking more in depth into his play this season, that's really allowed him to elevate to the place he is right now.
What's great about Scotty is that he hasn't necessarily seen an increase in usage, an increase in minutes, or anything like that. His role, for the most part, I mean, he is getting the ball more often and he is getting more touches, but for the most part, his role, like his responsibilities haven't changed too much because there is still a Pascal on the roster. There are still other players on the roster that demand attention in Schroeder, in IQ, in RJ. And so he's still been able to excel. The 3 point shooting obviously is a huge factor here. He went from like a career 30% shooter to a 37, 38% shooter. It's a massive leap. It's a staggering leap. If he keeps this up, it'll be one of the best 3 point shooting leaps by a player in a while. And I think ultimately that's the biggest factor offensively for what's changed. The playmaking is improved. The pick and roll craft has improved as well. But the defense is what really has popped off the page. His activity as a help defender, weak side defender, blocking shots, getting steals, using his arms to get in passing lanes. All of that is really special, and it shows his two-way versatility. It also shows that even when the shot isn't falling, he's finding other ways to impact the game. So he's looking like an all-star this year. Hopefully he makes it. Doesn't seem like he's going to get voted on, but
No, yeah, he's
yeah,
not on the
yeah,
top 10, but yeah, I saw that. And with that, just quickly,
yeah.
no pun intended, is do you think Scottie Barnes is long-term a center? Like, where do you see him on defense specifically? Just because he's been so good on the weak side and helping, but still needs to improve a little bit on ball as a defender. Just where do you see that for him?
I think the Raptors need to find a way to maximize him more on that end, and that will come with relying on a guy like Quickley more often on defense, finding more perimeter defenders. Obviously, without OG Anunoby, Scotty is being tasked with being the primary defender on some of these superstar players. I don't think that necessarily is the best place for him. You even look at a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is a Defensive Player of the Year winner, right? He wasn't an on-ball defender winning that Defensive Player of the Year. He was more of an off-ball, weak side rim protector, guy who could block shots, etc. Like that was what Giannis was as a Defensive Player of the Year type player. I think Scotty can get to that level defensively if he's maximized and put into that role. But you do need players around him that make sense. I assume that's what the Raptors are trying to figure out here with the Pascal trade, with IQ and RJ being involved as well.
What have you liked so much so far with IQ or Emmanuel Quickly for people that don't know his nickname? But so far, just what does he add to this team?
I think IQ. Obviously, the Raptors lost Fred VanVleet last year. They lost their only pull-up shooting threat. That's the main thing that IQ brings. It's an ability to with the ball in your hands, pull up and take a shot and make it. And he's incredible at that. 43% pull up shooter before he came to Toronto. I'm not sure what the number is now. But he was really, really elite at pulling up and making his shots. Great pick and roll player. The Raptors don't run a ton of pick and roll because they were missing those type of players. And he's also elite off of the ball too. So he's quick, he's bursty. He can zoom around a screen, catch the ball, and let it fly. He's able to zoom around a screen, get into his floater bag as well. Just an elite offensive player, both on and off the ball. And I'm really excited to see how he grows with this group, especially with Scottie, obviously, because their games mesh so well. As this guy who can both play on the ball and off the ball, it just seems like it's a perfect fit.
And obviously, Darko Rajakovic. We were actually both on the same global story. I don't know if you noticed that
Nice.
yesterday on Darko's rant. Just what have you seen from him being around the team a little bit, and what he's brought to the team, and maybe a little bit, how would you maybe evaluate his X's and O's so far this season?
I think people have been very, very hard on Darko Rajakovic, and I think people forget that he is a rookie coach and he needs to figure out his own things. He will make mistakes. He will miss rotations. He will be rigid. He will not know when to be flexible, and I think those are all the things a rookie head coach, first time being a head coach in his career, that's going to be a hurdle for him. And he had to get used to that. But I think there's no question through the little rant that he had yesterday, through the way that he's invigorated the locker room, that he has gained the trust of his players. And also now with guys like RJ Barrett and Immanuel Quickley, he's been given the players that actually fit the style he wants to play. So it's no longer square peg, round hole. It's a match. They play well together. The thing makes sense. That, like I said earlier, there's a functionality to the way that they play, and it's allowing Darko to play the way that they coach the way that he wants to. So it's been a great fit. I'm sort of excited to see how he grows, in the coming
Mhm.
years too, because there is definitely room for him to grow as well.
Where would you say the biggest room for him to grow is?
I think just the rigidness is my opinion. He's very, at least initially before the trade, he was very, very stuck in this is my rotation. I'm not moving away from it. This is, Pascal Siakam is going to check out for the start of the fourth quarter. He's not going to check back into the game until 5 minutes or even 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And sometimes you have to be more fluid with it given the game. That was something that, Nick Nurse excelled at, is like the fluidity, change, stop on a dime. They're very different coaches, clearly. But I think that's probably an aspect where I want him to improve, is like being more open minded to changing things. Now, to be fair, when I went to the game, I think against Cleveland, someone asked him about that. And he's like, look, I'm open minded. Like, I want to change, I want to grow. And so if he has that mindset, if he has that approach, I think it's the right way to move forward. And hopefully he'll grow.
And obviously, Masai and Bobby have been overseeing this team for a long time.
Yeah.
And now it seems as though the fan base might be slightly turning on them. But I think after the RJ and quickly trade, it's maybe softened a little bit the pressure on them. But how would you
Yeah, they
maybe
bought
about?
themselves some goodwill. They bought themselves some goodwill, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, especially RJ playing the way he has been
Yeah.
to start his Raptors career. But how would you really evaluate those two as the management core? And are you a bit worried about where this team, the direction of this team going forward?
I would say I am not worried because you have the silver lining of Scottie Barnes and now Immanuel Quickley. And so it's really hard to mess up that when those players are developing the way that they do. I think ultimately, the question I will have moving forward with this team is how they're going to win around the margins. For a very long time, the Raptors were a team that nailed second round picks, nailed undrafted signings, nailed trades, all that stuff. And, over the last 4 or 5 years, they've sort of been behind the eight ball when it comes to those type of things. How are they going to be able to do that? How are they going to improve that? And I think that's probably where I would start when it comes to the Masai and Bobby stuff.
And for the rest of the season, like, should the goal be to make the play in? Would that be a successful season?
Man,
What?
it's not even the goal, it's the mandate. Like there is no way that the Raptor MLSC and ownership and all that will allow this Raptors team to bottom out. They do not want that to happen. And a lot of that has to do with the renovations that they're doing to Scotiabank Arena, $350 million worth of
Oh wow.
renovations. A lot of that has to do with the potential sale of MLSE, and the CEO is changing and all
Yeah.
that stuff. There's a lot of moving parts business wise to Maple MLSE right now, and so I don't think they want that that complete change, because when a team goes into a rebuild, team interest dies, fans stop coming, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think they want that loss in revenue. I think the Raptors would rather stay competitive as possible. So yes, play in is the goal, playoff is the goal. We'll see if they can do it. They have a pretty big hurdle to come across here, but who knows?
Do you think that's the right approach?
I would say it's an interesting thought process to have. Um, Conventional wisdom would say bottom out. You're no longer a good team. Get as much young, talented prospects as possible with a guy like Scottie Barnes and Immanuel Quickley and reset. But also the other side is Scottie is already becoming really good. Like he's gonna get a rookie max extension. He's 22 years old. In a couple of years, maybe 3 or 4 years, he'll be in his prime. And so you want to be ready to compete when he gets to that level. Um, how does that look for a team that is supposed to bottom out? And how are you able to manufacture that quickly? There are some good examples. Memphis, they bottomed out for a year, got John Morant, and then they're back. OKC, they bottomed out for a couple years, got Chet Holmgren and J Dub, and they're back with SGA as an MVP type player. So there are worlds that it works, but there's also the version of the Pistons. There's also the version of the Magic. There's also the version of version of the
That's
the Spurs and whatnot. And there are bad examples. There are good examples. I think it just goes depending on what you believe in Scottie Barnes, what you believe in Immanuel Quickley, how good you think they'll be, and how soon you think they'll be that good. Yeah, that's part of the discussion here.
my last Raptors question. How good do you think Scottie Barnes can be?
I mean, he's an all-star level player right now. If the shooting sticks, if he's able to become, a 38, 39, 40% shooter, it's going to be really tough to guard him. His points per game totals will skyrocket. His ability to get to the line, I think, will improve and, drawing contact and whatnot. So I would say he could become like a top 15, top 10 type player in the league if this, tracks the way it is.
Mm-hmm. Uh, Before I let you go, I have some Canada basketball questions for you, but I just
Sure.
want to
Yeah.
ask a little bit about the NBA because you do cover the whole league as well. Just right now, who would be your finals pick?
Ooh, I actually the other day someone asked me this. I would say Boston and Denver is my pick. I think the Nuggets
Safe.
get back to the finals. Yeah, it's a safe pick. It is a safe pick. I agree with you. Denver just gets back to the finals. I think there are a lot of good teams in the Western Conference, but a lot of them are also flawed, and Denver is probably the least flawed in that scenario. They have the most experience. They can get there, so I think it'll be Denver. And then in Boston, I mean, in the Eastern Conference, there's going to be a lot of tough teams that they'll face, and I think Boston has its own flaws, but I just trust them more than anybody else to get to that point. So Boston, Denver.
Are you with me? And my MVP pick is Shea, and maybe I'm just a little biased, just a little bit,
Yeah,
but
look, we both are. We
yeah,
both are. And I did like a Bleacher Report stream earlier today, and they
cool.
were like, "Hey, what do you think your MVP vote is?" And I said Shea. Like I'm like, look, man, I'm not gonna lie to you. I can understand the arguments for Joel. I can understand the arguments for Jokic. They're putting up ridiculous numbers and crazy advanced stats, but Shea is almost right there with them. 36-6, great efficiency, near the top of the league in steals. He's improved as a defender. Obviously, the Thunder are winning in bunches too, and they're second in the Western Conference. I think if there were any year you could give it to a guy like SGA, it would be this year. But who knows, man? Jokic and Embiid are just different animals. So I
Narrative.
would say SGA, but you know,
I like his narrative just because Jokic and Embiid have been winning every single MVP for the past
right?
3-4 years. So
Yep,
it,
yep,
it
yep.
it makes sense, and his like he's literally having the best season of his career too. It's not just that he's stayed the same as he was last year, more efficient, shooting the three ball better too. So okay, so now I have a couple fun Canada basketball questions. The first
Cool.
one that I've been asking people in the basketball sphere is who is the best Canadian basketball player of all time? Is it Steve Nash or SGA? And it's in the context of playing for Canada. So I won't say obviously Steve Nash had a longer career than Shea has so far.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's not in that
So
context.
just Team Canada.
Yes.
I would say that's tough. That is tough because a medalist versus an Olympian, and Shea probably will become both an Olympian and a medalist in the summer. Um, I would say right now it's Steve Nash. In like 6 months' time, it'll be SGA.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. I think that's my answer too. So yeah, I totally agree. I think once Shea probably goes to the Olympics, dominates, Canada might win a medal.
Yeah.
Can be hard to say no to that. So obviously I'll ask you a bit about the Kelly Olynyk piece just at the end, but who would be your 12 players that you'd send to Paris for Canada? And I'll
Mm.
presume that the seven guys that went to Indonesia and to the Philippines are there in terms of Lou Dort, Shea, Dylan Brooks, Kelly Olynyk, Dwight Powell. I said Lou Dort, RJ
Yeah,
Barrett,
you
and
got RJ
then
Barrett. Yeah,
Nikhil Alexander
six.
Walker. There you go. And then you can
Yeah.
even add Jamal Murray too, because I think if he wants to play, he'll be there. So you have
Yeah.
four guys at the end who kind of fills out your roster.
Oh man, I would like to get some size in there, so I think I would like to see Zach Edey.
Wow.
I would give the nod to Zach. He's been great in college. You
Hmm.
obviously need some size to deal with the Jokic, even to just take some fouls against a guy like Jokic would be nice. So give me some Zach Edey. Um, and then the next three, I would like to see Andrew Nembhard in there as a point guard, kind of creator type that works. Oh, we forgot Dylan Brooks. Did you mention Dylan
Yeah,
Brooks
I said Dylan
in
Brooks.
the
Yeah.
eight?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay, you did. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andrew Nembhard in there. I think Andrew makes a lot of sense as like a backup point guard guy who can kind of keep the bench afloat for the most part. Great defensive player as well. Um, I kind of want to give the nod to Melvin Ejim just because like he was such a massive part of this summer from what they were saying. Like great locker room guy,
Yeah.
was keeping guys motivated. He was such a huge part. I think it makes sense to give him the nod. And then for the final spot, pick a young Canadian guard, whoever the hell you want in there that you want to throw in there, whether it be Shaden Sharp or Ben Matherin or Andrew Wiggins. I don't know. I think
Oh well,
I'm
yeah. I
open
was
to
gonna ask
whatever.
because that's in my Canada basketball sphere. The whole thing is what do you do with Wiggins? I think it's the Golden State problem too right now.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
what do you like? Do you think if he's just playing this way, there's no I like would you
I
invite
don't
him to
know.
camp and then try to cut like see if he's playing better
Yeah.
or engaged? What do you do there?
I don't know. I That's a great question. I have no idea how to approach that situation because he was also not one of the people who committed, right? So there's a world in which you can just be like, "Hey, we're going with the people who committed for this 3-year program. We're going to keep moving that way and we'll go from there." But I don't know if he does say he wants to play and he's like one of the biggest names on there. How much opportunity are you going to give him? Does he start over RJ or Dylan? I don't think he does. And then you're saying you have to come off the bench. Is he down for that? I don't think he is. And so it might get messy. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because do they go super team route or do they go obviously barring injury or Jamal like for me as a Canada basketball fan, I think I'm cheering for Denver and OKC to lose early just so that they play for Canada, but
Yeah.
obviously
Yeah.
I want them to if they win the chip, I'm happy for them, but yeah, no, for sure. That is going to be a big conundrum and I've heard about some of the NBA players that were at camp when I obviously met you in Toronto that were
Leonard Miller, right? Leonard
Leonard
Miller.
Miller, who's been
Yeah.
great in the
Yeah.
G League,
Yeah. Yeah.
and kind of fits a need too. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Okay. Obviously you wrote about Kelly Olynyk just today. Anything you want to touch upon that piece and how it came together and just maybe his importance to the men's team.
He is the ultimate teammate from everybody you ask. I had the chance to talk to Will Hardy. I obviously told you about Lowry Markkinen, talking to him, talk to Omer Yurtseven, who's fellow countryman. But yeah, I got the chance to talk to a lot of cool players, some coaches, just get perspective from even Rowan Barrett. He has been the ultimate teammate and the ultimate Canadian player in terms of what Canada basketball is supposed to embody in terms of being unselfish, in terms of commitment. It's great. Honestly, he is like one of the flagship foundational, whatever you want to call it, whatever verbiage you want to use to define it, but he has been so sedimentary, so incredibly important to what this team is. And yeah, I mean, shout out to Kelly Olynyk. You can read my piece at Raptors Republic. We talked about how he's the ultimate teammate, how he wears multiple hats, 500 of them, but yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, and then you said he left 500 in Miami, was or
Yeah,
did
he
he sell it?
sold. I think he said he sold or donated 500 to someone in Miami, and now he only has 200 left. Where it's like
He-
200, I have five.
yeah,
I have five hats.
he's the PJ Tucker of hats.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah. Thanks so much, S, for doing this. I always appreciate you coming on, and you're
Of
doing
course.
amazing work, and love following you on Twitter. I feel like I watched the game vicariously through you. So, thanks again for doing this. Anyways, just give you the floor. Anything you want to plug in specific?
Yeah, no, thank you as always for having me on, my guy. I really appreciate it. You can find my work at just S Baraheni on Twitter. I do some writing for Raptors stuff on Forbes. I do some writing for Raptors Republic, and yeah, you'll be seeing me around. You'll be seeing me around.
Well, I hope to see you this summer. Maybe catch some Canada, maybe USA friendlies this summer,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
might be in the ether. And thanks again for doing this, and best of luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it.